Everyone, and welcome, both here at the temple, Ananda Portland, and for those joining us online. It is a wonderful opportunity to be here together and welcome our special guests, Nayaswami Shanti and Brahmacharini Lakshmi from Ananda Palo Alto. So thank you, great souls, for joining us. They obviously have a lot of wisdom and experience to share with us, but more than anything, it's just a sharing of, divine friendship and inspiration. And I know we all feel that when we come together in a little bit more of a slightly more formal setting like this, but throughout the weekend, just of sharing in that connection together. So as most all of you know, Nayaswami Shanti serves as the co-director, the director of the work in Palo Alto, and Lakshmi is a light bearer and minister there as well, and also serves in education, as Shanti has served as a physician for many, many years. But again, these various roles that they play, that we all play, are just superficial, relatively speaking, to our roles as devotees, as disciples of a great master. And that's the capacity they're here. We're all here to share in this evening and throughout this weekend. So once again, thank you for joining us with all our hearts, with gratitude. And Lakshmi will lead us in a prayer. And we don't need this mic.
Well, I'll just echo and speak for both of us just briefly before we open with a prayer and say it's such a joy to be here with all of you. We've been looking forward to coming up for a few months, and it's just a great privilege to get to share energy with all of the light, bright, beautiful souls here and online and everywhere. So let's begin with a prayer and bring the masters ever more presently into our evening together. Divine Mother,
Divine Mother,
Heavenly Father,
Heavenly Father,
Friend, beloved God,
Friend, beloved God,
Jesus Christ,
Jesus Christ,
Babaji Krishna,
Babaji Krishna,
Lahiri Mahashaya,
Lahiri Mahashaya,
Swami Shri Yukteswar, beloved Guru,
beloved Guru,
Paramahansa Yoganandaji,
Paramahansa Yoganandaji,
saints and sages of all religions,
saints and sages of all religions,
friend and guide Swami Kriyananda,
friend and guide Swami Kriyananda,
flow through us
as
life-sustaining prana, in the whisper of your love,
in the whisper of your love,
in the closeness of your thoughts.
in the closest of your thoughts.
Help us to be with you in every moment,
Help us to be with you in every moment,
uplifting our consciousness
uplifting our consciousness
into your infinite ray,
into your infinite ray,
that we may be ever more perfect,
that we may be ever more perfect,
channels of your light and love
channels of your light and love
into this world.
into this world.
Om. Peace.
Peace.
Amen.
Amen. Oh, it's good to be back here. We were coming every year for quite a while, and we've had some wonderful time together, all of us, many of us. And then we missed last year and come back this year and just have been so uplifted by the energy here. Just the sense of transformation, and it's just feels great to be here, as it would anyway, but as it always did, I should say. But this year, really particularly, it's feel very blessed to be with all of you. There's also always this wonderful, wonderful experience that happens. We were talking about it over some breakfast this morning. It's hard to put it into words, but when you realize what a huge extended family you have, but a family that you're so perfectly in tune with, it just helps you feel bigger and more well-grounded, and just deepens our attunement. It's quite an experience. It happens here. It actually happens around the world now. As the Ananda world gets bigger and bigger, we feel it. But anyway, thank you all for being here, because it's wonderful being with you. We're going to do something a little unusual tonight. Not unusual for me to speak about healing, because as you all know, any of you have heard me speak, it finds its way into anything that I talk about. But tonight, we felt to talk about healing, very specifically about what that means for us in Dwapara. It's an unusual, a little bit of a different take on the topic of healing. I have to say, it came to mind for me a couple of months ago when I came across a little blog that Dr. Peter wrote, Dr. Peter from the village, many of you know him, and he wrote this sweetest little blog. It's 2 paragraphs, I think, but I don't even remember what it was called, but it was around this topic, healing in Dwapara, and the first thing he talked about was smiling. Then he talked about laughter. I mean, it's a very different way, but the perfect way, really. And as I said, it was 2 paragraphs, and I thought, really time for me to start speaking of healing outside of the medical model. So we'll do that in just a couple of minutes. First, I would like to ask Melissa. Here's Melissa. We're going to do just a few minutes of yoga, then we're going to have the choir sing, and then I'll come back up and speak a little bit.
Thank you. Okay, it may not be a few minutes, but it will be a few, maybe less than a minute, very well worth it. So we'll practice the full yogic breath flow, Durga Pranayama. So if you don't know what that is, we're gonna stand up for this as you can, but if you cannot, then you can do this from your chair. So this helps dispel moods, self-centeredness, lethargy, all those things that we don't need if we want to be a smile millionaire. So we're going to first take a deep breath in, exhale forward, just bending forward at the hips, and just come down as far as your arms can go. It doesn't need to go all the way to the floor. And now as you inhale, we're going to feel the magnetism from the hands as you brush that energy up the front of the body, reaching up tall, opening the arms, feeling the heart open, feeling yourself open to divine light. And now exhale, bringing those hands, pointing them in front of the body, going all the way down. You might feel that your hips will allow you to go down a little further the next time. And now as you inhale, coming back up, feel yourself uplifting, reaching for divine love, divine light. And now as you exhale, we're going to concentrate on letting go of anything that holds you back, something like tiredness or moodiness. And then as you inhale, let's lift that energy up. Feel it rising in the spine, opening up, expanding, and exhale. We'll do one more time, folding forward, bending all the way as far as you can, and then use that magnetism to draw your willingness and your willpower up to the spiritual eye, opening up the arms, and then we'll finish with bringing the arms down to the side. And just stand for a moment, relaxed in your center, gaze is uplifted. Just feel for the difference in your energy. Namaste. Thank you. Now we'll invite the choir up.
The secret of laughter lies in the laughing, not in the search for joy. It's a swallow winging on the wind, it's innocence in a boy. Luraluralero, luraluralai, joy will come to learned to fly. Lurelurelero, lurelurelai. Joy will come to anyone whose heart has learned to fly. Joy in the singing, not in the song some welcome but never crave. If you think that laughter lies in things, to things you'll be but a slave. Lurelurelero, lurelurelai. Joy will come to anyone whose heart has learned to fly. Lurelurelero, lurelurelai. Joy will come to anyone whose heart has learned to fly. Joy in the giving, not in the gaining. Grasp and you'll never sing. If you win the world and still be poor, win peace and live like a king. Lurelurelero, lurelurelai. Joy will come to anyone whose heart has learned to fly. Lurelurelero, lurelurelai. Joy will come to anyone whose heart has learned to fly. Sing when the sun shines, sing when the rain falls, sing when the road seems strange. In the tempest seize the lightning flash and ride the winds of change. Lurelurelero, lurelurelai. Joy will come to anyone whose heart has learned to fly. Lurelurelero, lurelurelai. Joy will come to anyone whose heart has learned to fly. Lurelurelero, lurelurelai. Joy will come to anyone whose heart has learned to fly.
You know, when I was thinking of energy and healing in Dwapara, that song just popped into my mind. It was a perfect song, wasn't it? I mean, you just feel what a shift in energy can do. But I'll tell you another little story that just came to mind. Almost everybody in the room knows that I'm a physician. I was a practicing internist for many, many years. I still am actually practicing some medicine, but not like that. But anyway, you would go to these medical meetings, and this is not hyperbole. You would go into these huge halls, sit down, and they would talk at us. I mean, these intense topics: cardiology, pulmonary medicine, kidney disease, for 10 hours straight, 5-7 days in a row. Never, ever say, let's stand up, let's stretch, let's do it. And, you know, because I am the age I am, I was looking the other day, I was putting my date of birth in for something, and I had to put in 1947, which, of course, I do all the time because it's the year I was born. I thought, oh my God, that's so long ago. Does anybody, you know, I keep having this fear that I'm going to look down at the years and it's not going to go back that far. But anyway, having said that, right around my 20s was when a lot of Eastern things started coming to this country. Right now, for any of you who are younger, it just feels like it was always here. We were always talking about wellness and energy and breath and meditation, but that was not true in this country. I mean, it was very few people. You know, Ram Dass, thank God, took some acid many years ago, and he started us all thinking, like, wow, he's still pretty smart. In fact, he came back teaching us a little bit, but it was nowhere. So when I moved to This is so off topic, I can't tell. When I moved to Southern California to figure out what to do with my life, my husband and I had a little van that we had refinished so we could travel and live out of it. We were quintessential hippies because that's the years hippies came into being. The word didn't even exist before us. And we pulled our van up onto this beach, and we lived out of our van in the state park, which was contiguous right next to Encinitas and the Encinitas Hermitage. I had never heard of any of this stuff ever. Let me just go back and figure out why I'm saying all of this. It's a good story. It was a great story, actually, but I want to see what the point was. If I can't do it, it'll come back to me. Well, there's many points I can make, but I lost the point. Anyway, you all know a lot of the end of that story is that I was running on the beach and Master came and just basically got me and said, let's take you to medical school. I'm sorry the point of that left, but we'll get it back at some point. Anyway, all of this didn't exist, and we would go to these I know what I was going to tell you. So we were living out, my husband was a physician, I was an ICU, CCU nurse. We were sophisticated, bright people, and we were living out of our van. It was a little weird on the beach. We lived like that for 6 months. That was our home. But during that time, which was so wonderful, imagine it, we started going to these meetings about yoga. We had no idea what that word meant. None of these words. This vocabulary was really not all that prevalent. And lo and behold, I would go to these meetings, these wonderful meetings, instantly knowing that we were hearing truth. Instantly. I remember I said to my husband at one of the meetings, I turned to him and I said, I have no idea what this means, what I'm about to say to you. I felt this deeply, but my life is different now than it was ever going to be. And of course, little did I had no idea I was right. I was right about that. But anyway, we would go to these meetings with all of this sort of up-and-coming yoga stuff, and you'd sit for 45 minutes. Then they'd have you up and breathing and doing these postures and stretching. And I thought, what is wrong with us in medicine? Here we are. I was a nurse. I wasn't a doctor yet. We're trying to help people get well, but we're sitting in these meetings for hours and feeding people terrible food in the hospitals. And these people that everybody was trying to make fun of, it was like so healthy right from the beginning. Now, I'm telling you all of that because, of course, that was also not that many years ago when you think of the yugas. Suddenly I could help myself feel a little younger because, 55, 60 years ago is nothing compared to a yuga. Yugas are really a long time. But it was still enough in this place in Dwapara Yuga, and I'm going to assume that most of you know something about the yugas, but Dwapara itself will go on for 12,000 years. That's a lot of years. 1,200, I'm sorry. 1,200 years. It's a lot of years. We're not going to live from the beginning till the end of that. So it was a while ago, but nothing compared to that, to the whole yuga. But I realized in hindsight what was happening, this energy that we were being drawn into in this Dwapara Yuga, this age of energy. Now, all of us on this path hear about this. We hear about it all the time. Yogananda came. He was the avatar for this time of Dwapara, the age of energy. And it came to me when I was giving a talk on Swamiji's discipleship day, that Swamiji was the disciple of Dwapara Yuga. He came also during the same yuga to show us how do we live in this age of energy. I mean, there's so much we could say. I often wish I had printed out a list. I haven't, and I don't have it here. All that's happened since the late 1800s, early 1900s, but most of us have heard all of the things that have come into being. I mean, I remember when televisions came, never mind computers and all of what's happened in airplanes, and I mean, just, you can't think of it, what's going on. And here we are with AI, but all of this, all of it dependent on a total new from certainly Christ's time, new from even the middle 1800s, really, thinking, knowing, not thinking, knowing about energy, the truth about energy. So Lakshmi used the word prana in her prayer, and then Melissa came up, and because now we just all know that. We now know that we are energy existing in a sea of energy. But it's actually fascinating to think about how that has affected, certainly, medicine. Everything in medicine has changed. I remember not that long ago, I mean, maybe 10 years ago, when I realized that they could study the brain in a perfectly scientifically correct way to see what happens to us when we meditate. That's very subtle energy. So that's one thing, meditation, knowing about it, hearing about all of the impact of meditation that the vast majority of people in the world are still resisting. Not that many years ago, what's the man's name who just did a program with us? Puru. He created a workshop at the village that was about healing, of course, because he's interested in that. And he called me, wanted me to be a part of it. And he kept saying to me, but Shanti, this is scientific. I'm trying to make a point. You have to make it scientific. I said, okay, I'll try. I don't usually speak that way anymore, but you know, those days, those Stanford days of needing to present all the data, thankfully they were long gone. He must have called me 3 or 4 times before the program. Those of you who know Puru could understand. Are you sure it's going to be scientific? I said, Puru, I've actually had people help me make these phenomenal slideshows. Not just scientific, it's going to be beautiful. And it was. And it was extraordinary. I read about 100 medical articles and incorporated it into this talk. Every one of them showing medical articles from medical journals showing the impact of meditation on, and it's come a long way in the next, even that many years. I don't know how many years ago that was, 8, 10, I'm not sure. So much has happened since then. But I remember I said, Lakshmi will remember this. A couple of my friends came up to the village and they were at this workshop. I know their medical history. I know all the drugs they're on. I mean, not druggy drugs, but real blood pressure drugs. I'm not against any of that. Most of you know that. I mean, I'm a Western medical doctor. Western medicine saves lives all the time. It's beautiful. But here are my friends, cardiac meds, blood pressure meds, and they're sitting in the audience, just like many of you are now, watching these slides, this great talk. They're shaking their heads. That shows that if we meditate 15 minutes twice a day, 15 minutes, this incredibly high percentage of people either really lower the dose of these medicines, many medicines, now we know even more, or they come off of them. I mean, this is extraordinary. Think about it. 30 minutes in your day, and you can even do one of those app things. You know, it doesn't have to be this path. This path actually asks a lot of us, is the truth. It's not, we're old souls, everybody in this room. When you come onto this path, you're an old soul already. But you know, you can pick up your phone, find 10 different meditation apps. You just sit there, you focus on your toes for a while and your arm and this and that and all of what you do. And your blood pressure goes down. I just read a couple of articles just today. I didn't read them, but I read the summary of them just to be able to share this. People meditate 20 minutes now, twice a day. And there is very good data that says that the incidence of heart disease drops by 66%. But we don't have any medicines or anything that does that. And there's so much more that I could say. But I watched my friends, and nothing changed. Nothing changed for them. They were there. I was done. God, Shanti, that was so great, wonderful talk. I said, yeah, but did you hear the data? Oh, yeah, we heard the data. You know, the Yiddish word for, so what are you going to do about it is new. That's what she said. That's Yiddish. And I said it to them because they were my Jewish friends from growing up. Yeah, very hard to get people to change. But that's what was happening for me as a nurse, then going through medical school, is that I was doing that during Dwapara Yuga. I didn't know about the yugas yet, but during this time where everything about healing, everything, if we're real about it, if we're honest with ourselves, has changed so dramatically. Not that we shouldn't take medicines when we need them. Absolutely. And I know a lot of you have heard me say this. I tell all of my patients who I could say this to, let me say parenthetically, a lot of people used to come to see me after I moved into Ananda, which was in 2001. So now I was practicing here, because they thought that I would hate medicine and tell them not to take it. But that's not true. I don't feel that way. Blood pressure medicine is way better than having high blood pressure. And since we know that most people are not going to meditate, we know that now. Now there's a study done about that. You say to people, here's a study, diet, exercise, meditation. All of these numbers go down, literally. Then the vast majority of those people called their cardiologist and said, wow, I love that, and I love this new diet, but do I have to exercise and meditate? You know, people don't want to. It's hard to sit still. It's very hard to sit still. But I would say to people, take your medicine, put it on your altar, and pray. Pray. God is everything, right? Every single thing that we know is a manifestation of divine energy. Guess what? That includes your blood pressure medicine or your antibiotic or whatever it is. And as soon as we realize that, actually realize it, the taking of the medicine feels very different if we have to take it. We feel like we're just inviting God and God's consciousness in. And it really does, it's different. It's like, wow, I want more of that medicine, because it's divinely healing, whatever it is. So I'm saying it to say, I'm not opposed to medicine, but I love the idea of speaking the truth about what that medicine is, because it's the truth. I mean, there's nothing else that exists in the world. There's nothing that exists except divine energy. So, I mean, every single thing has been manifested from that same great superconscious source. So, I'd like to tell you a story. Some of you have heard this story, but I'm going to tell it because it's a perfect, what we're trying to do today, and in the next hour we'll just get closer and closer to this, hopefully, is to talk about where we, as yogis, as disciples, if people are disciples, I don't know all of you, so I'm not sure, but people who were interested enough to come tonight, what does healing mean to us? It's very different. What does it mean? Peter wrote about smiling, for instance. That was one of his 2 little paragraphs. You know, in Raja Yoga, Swamiji wrote, he said, actually, Master said, so he's quoting Yogananda, that every single time we smile, this is our teacher's words, every time we smile, a little bit of Kundalini is released. It's right in the Raja Yoga book, the chapter of spiritual anatomy. That is extraordinarily good news. I mean, imagine, you don't have to do anything difficult. You smile. So when Master said, remember this, if you aren't somebody who smiles, and there are many people, you see them, even on this path, they just don't smile. But he said, go in front of the mirror a couple of times a day, remember, and lift the corners of your lips up like this, like fake it. Because that energy is so uplifting that it starts releasing little bits of Kundalini. That's our goal. We want to release all of that Kundalini. So smiling turns out to be an extraordinarily good way to heal body, mind, and soul. It doesn't matter what it is. How many of you have ever heard of Norman Cousins? Okay, good, a lot of you. So in the 70s also, right as Dwapara Yuga was becoming even a known thing here, he decided he had a very serious disease, ankylosing spondylitis. You don't need to know what it is, but it was serious. And he decided, he knew somehow, just intuitively, came to him that if he could laugh so many minutes a day that he could heal himself. He told people that. He was a very highly respected writer, researcher, so people weren't just going to say, oh yeah, look at this guy, this hippie who's stoned over there. No, it wasn't. It's not who Norm Cousins was. Very respectable figure. And he started doing that. 2 hours a day, he watched funny movies. What was funny to him? He would watch the Marx Brothers and I forget what else, and just laugh, and he healed himself. It was not a condition that any medical doctor thought could be healed. Well, it started a whole big thing, you can imagine. First, people decided, oh, that's great, all I have to do is laugh. Then many people realized, honestly, how hard it was for them to laugh. But I'm saying this to circle around to get back into this smiling thing. Any positive thing, and I looked up Norm Cousins today when he came to mind, and the person who was writing the commentary on him, I mean, he wrote books about this, he became very well known for this, said, research that was done later showed even if you fake the laugh, it works. This is true. Isn't that amazing? You can fake the laugh and you don't even really have to be genuinely happy and you'll still get better. This is actually remarkable. This is Dwapara Yuga. This is looking at, Master says, I want to, Lakshmi and I do so much together. I probably didn't even have to point my finger. It's like almost we're intuitively one here. Master says this, I wanted to quote this and not paraphrase it. Only in the unlimited power of spiritual methods may man find a permanent cure for any disease of body, mind, or soul. Listen to that again. This is so meaningful to us. This says, go deep with this. Listen, we can joke, we can laugh, but it's serious. I mean, we better laugh. That's the point. That's what Master said. He said, smile. Only in the unlimited power of spiritual methods, unlimited power. Every word in here is so powerful and real. May man find a permanent cure for the diseases of body, mind, and soul. There is no other way to be well. That's a remarkable but true statement. No matter, and I've already told you how much I love Western medicine, and I do. I've had this amazing, amazing career. Let's see, almost 40 years now. A little more than 40. Actually, I started medical school, 46 from the time I started. Amazing, of helping so many people. It's so touching to me. Always feeling so close to Yogananda, who, many of you know the story, but who came to me on the beach one day and said, go to medical school, because remember, I lived right next door to him. Well, he had died in 52. I wasn't there in 52, but when I came later, I had no idea who he was. This guy in this orange robes, we had never seen a Swami. We didn't hear the word Swami. It just didn't happen here quite yet. But he came, said, go to medical school, and by the way, it needs to be an Ivy League school. You're going to need credibility, he told me. God, he was so right about that. It still shocks me how right he was about everything. Stanford, by the way, is not an Ivy League school, but I didn't know it, but it's good enough. It's still thought of as being the best medical school in the world, so I figured even if they didn't make it one of the Ivy Leagues, but so it's been an extraordinary career, extraordinary. Now, of course, my career's been laced with my spiritual knowing of everything. That's what's happened. I don't see a client without this deeply intuitive component, because I was gifted that. And I'm not a healer, not like that. Just suddenly having an idea, knowing, gee, this is what I think is wrong. I'll share a story with you. I'm keeping track of the time. Lakshmi says, I am keeping track of the time. But this is amazing, actually. These stories just are, and all of you who have heard them know, I don't take credit for these stories. First of all, it doesn't matter how smart I am. I'm not smart, which is what I always tell people. Master just put me at Stanford. I was like, la-di-da, this is great. I love medical school. My classmates were looking at me like, is she crazy? This is so hard. We never sleep. We hate it. We're being grilled every morning on medical rounds, which you were. And I was coming up to them saying, isn't this fabulous? They actually thought I was nuts. But it was fabulous because I was there in a very different way. But I just share the first story that comes to mind. A lot of you have heard it, but I was working alone in my office one day. My two partners were away. We had the 3 busiest practices in Baltimore at the time. So when they left, it was busy. And I was seeing 40 people that day. For those of you that don't know, doctors usually see about 15. I mean, it was a lot. And in walks the nun from the hospital that I worked in. She was one of the, like the senior vice president of the hospital in some capacity. Dr. Rubentone, and she was my patient too. She said, I had to bring my father in. He's having back pain. This like really grumpy old man, he was so grumpy, and he was so old, although he probably wasn't even my age at the time, but he really looked old. He said to me, I don't need to be here. I had a little back pain. She said to me, his pain was so severe that he was throwing up. So anyway, I'll cut this story a little short. I examine him, and he has this thing on his side. It's called mottled skin. modeled. Probably some of you have seen it anyway. I didn't know what that meant. His skin was mottled, and he had back pain. And, half the people who come into an internist's office have back pain. It's a very common diagnosis. Something says to me, take this seriously. And he's yelling, I want to go home. There's nothing wrong with me. This is ridiculous. So I said to him, I need to leave. I'm going to go see another patient, but I'll be back. Because I had to collect myself, when these feelings come, like, this isn't right. He looked fine, except for this little skin thing, honestly. And I leave the room, and I just stop for a minute, and I just kept feeling, no, this is no good. So I go back in, and I said to him, okay, here's the deal. I need to send you over to the emergency room. Here's your choice. You get in your daughter's car and you go, or I call 911. Of course, I knew what he was going to choose, but he said, I'm going to go with my daughter, but she's going to stop at home first so I can pick up a few things. Nope, no stopping at home. Hospital, or I call an ambulance. He gets in the car. They go to the hospital. I call the ER doc. I said, I have no idea what's going on, but this looks really, something in me is telling me. I said, he just had back pain. It's gone now, which it was. But something tells me. Something was master, was always master. So the ER doc says, what does he have? I said, his skin is mottled. And that's the only thing I could find on exam. The ER doc knew. It rang a bell for him. And it turns out, I never knew this till last week when my ex-professional partner wrote me a letter and said, I just heard you tell that story. He was watching some old talks of mine about Turner-Gray syndrome. Turner-Gray's, I never knew what it was. Turner-Gray's sign. I would have never known till last week. Now I know the name of it. The ER doc had an idea, sees him, gets him right to the OR immediately. Many of you have been in the hospital. Things don't move like this. They open him up, and as they open him up, his aortic aneurysm, huge aneurysm, ruptures right in front of him. I mean, if he had gotten there 1 minute later, he would be dead. It was just, these things, they were happening all the time. They were happening. This is Dwapara Yuga. This is tuning into, doesn't matter what you do. This is medicine, so the stories are always dramatic. I'm trying to make a book out of all of them because they're fascinating, really. They are. But what's most fascinating is what we can hear if we listen. If we're willing to say whatever's going on with us, what? What do I need to do? Tell me. We ask it at the beginning of a meditation. We listen. Listen, not really with our ear, not like that. We listen with an open heart. We listen from our heart chakra. Lakshmi's going to speak a little bit about intuition in a bit, but that's what this is. It's trusting. It's willing to believe that things are going on that we can't really see in the way we're used to seeing or know about in the way we're used to knowing about. Except now in Dwapara, I can stand up here and say this to a room of, 30 people, and nobody thinks I'm crazy. Nobody. Everybody gets it. You see, the real question, and I'll come back to this after I'm going to sit down for a few minutes and ask Lakshmi to come. Here's the real question that we all have to ask ourselves, though. How is this applicable to me? How can I make this real in my life? What does it mean that I have this extraordinary karma, great good karma, to be born at this time with these teachers, with Swami Kriyananda, explaining everything to us, and I'm here. What am I meant to do with this? On a large scale, what am I meant to do? How can I bring it into whatever, raising a family, any job that you have. It does not need to be medicine. Lakshmi teaches school. She teaches high school English. Now, there's a hard job, actually, but it's Lakshmi going. So it's different. She's a yogi. She knows these things. She relates to her students differently than my English teacher related to me. I'm sure of that. What happens if I get sick? What am I going to do with it? How do I use these teachings? You know, many of you know Yudhishthira, who's right? A lot of you are shaking your heads. Yeah, he lives in our community. Just a few weeks ago, he was diagnosed with a very bad cancer, really bad cancer. I mean, it's known to be, it's very unusual, very aggressive, filling his esophagus, really filling it. I mean, he was sick, but it's a complicated story why he didn't realize. But I say a few weeks, maybe it was 5 weeks. Very quickly, they got him in, they got him diagnosed, and, you know, a biopsy. And just last week, he started a rather aggressive chemotherapy regimen. But I'm telling you this story because he's been so sick. He's been in such pain. He's a very smart man. He can open Google and get AI to tell him exactly what signet cell carcinoma means. You know, it's not, you don't need to be a doctor anymore. You just read about it. Not good. 5 different chemotherapeutic agents. Difficult. Yet, when I go to see him, I leave feeling so uplifted. That's what it means to take these teachings and make them work. To just say, wait a minute, what am I supposed to do with this information? What about the time I was born, the place I was born? But I have the great good karma to be here so that now when we see a yogi, we don't go, what's that? Oh, look, that guy in the orange robes. And my husband and I used to make fun of it, of the Encinitas Hermitage. Master forgave me for that. But, you know, we just didn't know, but now we know. So I'll come back. I want to complete this thought in a different way. But the real question is for each of us to consider, what can I take away from here tonight, bring it into my life, and make my life work totally in tune with these very great and extremely subtle teachings. So let me ask.
So, as Shanti mentioned, I get the privilege, actually, she didn't mention, I'll talk about intuition later, but first I get to talk about attunement. And as I was listening to Shanti speaking, I was thinking I have to share the disclaimer that, of course, all of you will know already. I have no credentials. I have no medical stories. I have no background in medicine. But as I was listening, because I was thinking, oh boy, what right do I have to stand up here and talk about healing? And then I realized, looking at these great masters, that I'm a devotee, as so many of us are. And that gives us all of the right and the merit that we need to talk about what true healing and true health and wellness actually means. And, you know, just to pick up exactly where Shanti left off and kind of summarize in a sentence or two all of what she's sharing, and we'll come back and share more. You know, at the root of it, we all know this. We know that healing and health and wellness does not reside in our bodies. We have to combat it and deal with it within the body. It doesn't even exist solely on the energetic level. It exists on the level of consciousness. And this is what Shanti was alluding to in so many of the stories that she's sharing here. Our true sense of wellness, our true sense of vitality, that prana that's flowing through us, our identification with our highest self, it exists in our consciousness. And as I was reading a little bit earlier today, I was reading a chapter from the book from the Yugas, and the authors have this wonderful little thread that they're putting together to talk about Treta Yuga, and I was thinking about it because here we are standing in Dwapara Yuga and talking about what healing looks like in Dwapara Yuga, but we are yogis, and so our job is to always be thinking ahead. So we need to be thinking about what it looks like to practice wellness in Treta Yuga. We have to be one step ahead of the game. And Puru and his co-author had this beautiful line, and they said that here we are in the current age when an athlete is working with practicing and putting in effort and energy, they're trying to master the physical body. Then he goes on to talk about how a practitioner of Tai Chi or a practitioner of yoga is working to not only master the physical body, but also to master prana, to master energy. And he went on to say that in Treta Yuga, we're going to learn to not only master the body, master our prana, our energy, but to master our mind. And that got me thinking about this idea of consciousness and what exactly that looks like, how, and what is it that we are attuning to. Because at the root of everything, our well-being lies in the reality or the fact that we can understand, that we can shed that layer of delusion that is keeping us locked into our limitations. Of course, we know this because Yogananda tells us over and over again, what is dis-ease is if it is not disharmony on some level. Energetically, within our prana, within our consciousness, there's some level of disharmony. And that disharmony is resonating just out of sync enough that something feels off within us. Feels off in the mental state, feels off in our emotional state, feels off in our physical state. And so to tune in to that ray that exists behind the delusion of our ego consciousness, behind the delusion of our limitations, that's the seed where we can begin to foster true wellness. And of course, what are we tuning into? If not these great masters behind us. You know, in that same blog that Shanti is referencing that Dr. Peter wrote, Healing in Dwapara Yuga, he says after talking about laughter and meditation and joy and smiling and all these things, he says, but if you have just one tool as a devotee of Paramahansa Yogananda, it would be attunement. Because with attunement, everything else begins to fall into place. Because the masters are omnipotent. The masters, they come and they act in the world and they move through this world and we relate to them as a physical being. You know, there's a beautiful story that Swami shares in one of the many little chapters that I was reading, where he was talking with a devotee who spent time with Master in India, and he said, he was asking him what it was like to live with Paramahansa Yogananda, and he said, oh, I just loved it. We were bunkmates or in a boarding house together, and he would come down every morning and he would cook breakfast, and he loved to cook breakfast. And this man was just sharing this sweet memory, and in the back of Swami Kriyananda's mind, he was thinking, oh, well, you know, how sad that this limited experience is what this man could relate to when he was so close to an avatar. Because what the masters come to bring us is that expression of omnipresence that exists within each one of us. And if we're living in that place of wellness, then, of course, dis-ease doesn't occur. We might still have to combat physical karma. We don't get to run away from our karma, but ultimately, our consciousness, we are in control of it. We've mastered the mind, we've mastered the body, we've mastered the mental, what is mind, body, which one? Energy, that's the one I was forgetting. We've mastered all of it. And so that we move through the world like this beautiful story. I've been so touched watching our friend Yudhishthira go through this, and you know, even the ways that he was sharing, because he was sharing in we have a little Google group where he's been writing emails about his journey, and just saying how many times as a teacher that he stood up here and talked about, said all the right things. What are we supposed to do when our karma hits, when we have to face it? How do we raise our energy to fight the battle? But woe when it happens to us, and how humbling that moment is. Because our egos are there. We live in this human incarnation. We're always going to be carrying that backpack of our humanity with us everywhere we go. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's the very expression of living in this world of duality. But we have the secret. Just like Dr. Peter could say, if you have but one tool, let it be attunement. Because even if you're carrying that heavy backpack of your humanity and the karma and the struggles and the trials that come along, what are you tuning into? What is the frequency of your consciousness? That's why that story about Norman Cousins is so beautiful. Why could Norman Cousins heal himself through laughter? Because for hours a day, he was tuning into a frequency of joy. And that joy permeated every ounce of his being. And just through that laughter, he was watching the Marx Brothers and reading P.G. Wodehouse and all of these wonderful, fun things that are beautiful to, that are great to enjoy. And that joy was just enveloping him. And when I was listening to Shanti share that story, I was thinking, beautiful that he could tune into a frequency of joy. But how much more extraordinary that we have the potential to tune into a frequency of divine consciousness, because it's right there. Yogananda's given us everything that we need to draw ourselves up into that ray. And true wellness comes from the very fact of learning and knowing that our power is never our own. Our power is always coming from and flowing through the great masters. And the more that we just subtly, of course we know, pretty soon, we were joking today, where's Lorna? We were joking today, she was carrying CDs around and saying, what do we do with all these CDs, and I was saying that just about, this is a tangent, but I am coming back to my point, I haven't forgotten where I was. I was telling her that just a few months ago, we did the same thing in our bookshop. We had a whole big box of CDs, and we put a basket out, and we put free on there, and no one would take them because no one has a CD player. And then we lovingly, I tell my students, this is what I say when they don't take their work. I say, it's going to be lovingly disposed of at the end of the week if you don't take it. So we put a basket out and said, this will be lovingly disposed of if you don't take it. But I was thinking about that because now, to come back to my point, the metaphor, of course, that we use for attunement is a radio, and saying that's pretty soon going to be an outdated, in not too long we'll be standing in this room and we're going to need a new metaphor, because here we are just tuning and tuning and tuning that little frequency. But when Gen Alpha shows up here, they're not going to know what that means, so we'll have to find something new for them. But here we are, just slowly tuning ourselves more and more. I was thinking about, there's a wonderful story that Shurjo, who many of you know, who was in the Mumbai Center, now he's in Italy with his wife Narayani. I think they were here just a few years, last year. He tells this beautiful story. He, before Swami left the body, Swami gifted him his watch, and so he was always wearing his watch. And every time he was with Swami, Swami would say, let's check the time. And he'd check the time, and he'd say, it's 9:24, and Swami would say, no, it's 9:28. Okay, I'll fix it, the next day. What time is it? What time do you have, Shurjo? 9:28. No, it's 9:28 and 3 seconds. Or just slowly, always having him tune in more and more closely. And Shurjo, in his wisdom, realized later, and when he was sharing the story with us in Palo Alto, was saying, I learned that what Swami was doing was just giving me a seed of reminder, just tune in. How close are you? How attuned are you? Just check the time. Let's just tune in a tiny bit more, increment by, tiny increment, so that we can begin to feel and to realize where our true power lies. Because, of course, this is the beauty of the yogic teachings, and what we know, the more we practice them, the more we realize that. The more that we're living in that place of inspiration that Shanti's speaking about, where Shanti's inspiration was able to help many people on the material plane. But Norman Cousins has the inspiration, let's just laugh. Let's laugh and see what happens. And even if it didn't heal the ailments of his body, he would have left this body in joy. And that is the true success. That's where we come back to. Wellness doesn't lie in the body. It doesn't even lie in the prana and the energy flowing behind us. It's even more subtle than that. It lies in our consciousness. And what is a victory if not our ability to be completely in tune with the true source of our power? So I'm going to pass it back to Shanti now.
Swamiji has that really wonderful definition of wellness. Again, we don't realize how mind-blowing this is, but it is for most people, where he says wellness is a state of mind that needs to be cultivated. And Lakshmi speaking about it so beautifully in terms of consciousness, that's even a higher way to think of it. But in terms of us getting there, how we see very clearly between what she's saying and the way Swamiji defined it, how what we're trying to talk about, we're talking about healing. Of course, if we get appendicitis, we want it out. If we get a cancer, we hope the chemotherapy works, whatever it is. But ultimately, this is the amazing point about this story with Yudhishthira. It just happens to be, he's the most current, it's right there, right now, very alive for us, is he said to me when I was with him just a couple days ago, we were having just a couple of moments where neither of us were saying anything, which happens a lot when I'm with him now, but he just looked, he said, "It's very humbling, Shanti." So I started to think I knew what that meant, but then fortunately, something pulled me back. And I said to him, what does that mean to you? Because I don't know what that meant to him. And he said, I had to get rid of the couch this morning as he's rearranging this little room he lives in. He said, just wouldn't think twice about helping Mahavir or David Praver or somebody lift up the couch and take it out. He said, but now I'm sitting here watching everybody doing everything for me. And this isn't a cancer at all, and I didn't say this part to him because it was inappropriate at the time, but it is appropriate here. As you start getting older, and then you start getting much older, so there's a big difference between 70, then 75, then 78. There's not the same kind of difference between 30 and 38 or 40 and 48. Really, it's true, it's not the same. But every year now, more than that. I mean, today I was literally getting dressed and I thought, good God, when did all of those spots come onto my thigh? It's just like, it's unbelievable. But you feel it. I'm feeling myself age. Just a kind of fatigue that comes in that was never there, or if the dog's barking and my husband's needing something and I'm trying to get out of the house, 5 times out of 10, I'll forget my phone or something. I can't twirl as many plates. And it is humbling. It's very humbling. And I'm trying to practice diligently aging well. I don't want to be afraid to age. When I told Lakshmi and I, for many years now, have gone to Yosemite. I love Yosemite. I've been going for decades, usually twice a year. I would do all the huge hikes, up out of Tuolumne. Now I can't do those. We were just in Tuolumne and we did hike, but we didn't go as high. And whatever, things are changing, you feel them changing. And I said to her, when I can't walk at all anymore, can you promise me that you'll bring me in a wheelchair and just push me around the valley? I don't want to quit coming, and I don't mind being in a wheelchair. If I can do that, that's wellness. That's tuning into a higher level of consciousness than this body. When we need help, we need help. When Yudhishthira can't do all the things he's used to doing. And it is so incredibly meaningful at a subtle level. And I want to see if I can find a way to say this. And honestly, I'm not sure I can. You know how we say every Sunday with our reading, truth is one and eternal. One and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self within. I probably heard that for about 20 years before I really heard it, because we just say it every Sunday. And then all of a sudden, one day I'm saying to myself, what does that mean? Why did Swamiji write those words. I just tuned into it. Now I see it in so many places in his writing, in his music, in everything. Yogananda says, there is only one truth. Whether it exists as joy, Lakshmi was talking about joy, pure joy is truth. And in that state of pure joy, we are healed, even if we get there as we're dying. Because the healing is really not about this physical body as much as we want it to be. What we're talking about in Dwapara is really, really knowing, as Swamiji and Master have said, this body is just a vehicle. It's like taking off, we die. He said it's like taking off your clothes at the end of the day, putting them on the floor in the hamper, wherever you put them, and taking on new clothes the next day, which is like a new body. The body comes and goes in a moment in terms of relativity. We're so attached to it, and our minds. I mean, really, in our minds. Boy, did I learn that at Stanford. Still learning it at Stanford. People are so attached to being smart and on top of things. It's nothing. Doesn't mean anything. Try and look at cancer in the eye with joy, with true joy, with perfect calmness. By the way, our rooms upstairs are called Joy and Calmness, and I love that. I walk into the room and I go, I'm coming into joy. It's a great reminder. You know, I actually really mean it, these 8 manifestations of the divine that we've all heard about. We mean it. When we perfect any one of them, we are in that place of perfect truth. It means being perfectly centered in that, you know, it's like what Yogananda wrote in the autobiography when he said, I lost a very important word in it. I cognized, which is already such a great word, right? I cognized the center of the Empyrean. That word means everything that exists in the whole universe. I cognized the center of the Empyrean at a point of intuitive perception in my own heart. Now, it doesn't only exist in his heart, it exists at the very center of every one of our hearts. And that's where we're finally perfectly healed. Not until then. And I'll share with you a realization that came to me during a retreat day that we had recently. And this is all going to come together because I don't really have time to talk about the topics that I wanted to talk about. I did mention right attitude. That was one of them. So we're talking about healing, right attitude. The other one that's most important, I'll just read you 1 or 2 things that Master says about devotion. But I'm just going to fly by this. But somebody help me remember that I was in the heart. Reminded me of devotion. Devotion is the most important, now I'm reading this to you, single quality. A heart purified with devotion, a pure heart, as Jesus said, blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Well, those are beautiful words. We probably all love the Beatitudes. I know I do. We do a huge program every November around them. But what does it mean if our hearts are pure? We see God. It means when we too can cognize the center of the Empyrean at the point of intuitive perception in our own heart, we know the divine, not before. Before that, it's a duality. It's not just inside of us. So we're not healed. This is really a crash course on healing, but it's okay. I mean, it's enough. It's sort of whetting our appetite, but that's the only place the true healing exists, is in the heart, and it's just so incredibly important. Just trying to think of which of these to read to you, because I'm not going to read any more of it. Master goes on in as many ways as he can throughout all of his teachings. I mean, you can look this up in any book, in our library, anywhere, constantly talking about devotion. And of course, Sri Yukteswar said, you can't put one foot in front of the other on the spiritual path until you've developed the natural love of the heart. And you know, we hear these words, but when you really try to think about what they mean. So I had this realization during this retreat, because devotion is a very difficult topic, actually. It sounds easy, but I've said many times, it's the number one question that I'm asked over all these years. How do I develop devotion? How do I open my heart? It's very hard for people. It is more difficult more often for men. But for everybody, we are so centered in our minds that it's really a challenge. And, you know, there's all these ways to develop devotion. It's not like Master doesn't, he has a whole section on his notes to disciples. I'm not going to read these to you, but I want to see how many there are. Yeah, here's 10 things he wrote. 10, they're wonderful, about ways to develop devotion. You know, whenever desire comes, give it to God, chant, keep good company, serve God and Guru, keep in tune with your Guru. Refuse to believe that you do not have devotion. He says that was interesting. But what I realized is that devotion is a product. This may seem obvious at first, but it's not. It's more subtle than it's going to sound. Of our Kriya practice, or if you're not a Kriyaban, of deep meditation. But I will say, particularly with Kriya, that because Kriya is a pranayama technique, Master says that in the AY, so everybody would know that, whether you've taken Kriya or not. So you're using prana means energy, yama means control. You're controlling energy, and we use the breath to do that. That's the whole of Kriya in a certain way. The practice of it, that's another story, and sticking to it, that's another story. But as we are controlling energy and we're feeling it in our astral spine, when we can actually get all of this energy drawn up and have that experience that Master said. Now, of course, he was talking about samadhi, but if we bring energy, you can practice this whether you have Kriya or not, up your spine, and you feel your heart open. And when it does, you know it. It's very hard to put words to it, but when it happens, when you've gathered all of this energy from all of these chakras, it's holding on so tight. We have 1 million lifetimes, at least 10 million. How did Master say 10 million, right?
5 to 8 million. Yeah.
5 to 8, whatever. Okay. I mean, between 5 and 10, who's going to argue? But, you know, a lot of lifetimes where we're accumulating karma, and it holds on. And it holds on very tight. You know how hard it is to change one habit that you don't even like about yourself. You want it to go away. Then you turn around sometime later and you're saying, are you still there? You open your mouth, you say the wrong thing, you're judging somebody. Whatever it is, it's like, God, I thought I let go of that when I was 20. But here it is, very challenging to change. But when we can get enough energy flowing, and we actually take all of that energy from these lower chakras and this third chakra power, all of that power, and we get it going up through our heart, It's like a mini explosion of everything perfect that happens in your heart. And you are in love. You're in love. Do you know what I mean? Not in love, no. Sitting in love, and you know it without a doubt. Nobody has to tell you. You feel that, and you know you're there. And that is why all of these great masters talk about healing and why you have to develop devotion. What they don't say, do all this, practice all of this, of course. Chanting is beautiful. It takes you out of your mind and it helps you open your heart. But the real way to develop devotion is to practice meditating, to do it, to keep doing it, to never, Lakshmi's going to talk about meditation and intuition in just a minute, but to not stop, because the truth is everything else is a technique out here that tries to get us there. But that running energy through our heart chakra, that's it. That's devotion. And in that place, no matter what's happening with this body, that's why Sister Gyanamata, as she was dying, what did she say? Joy, joy, too much joy. That's what she said. I want to be able to say those words when I'm leaving, because her heart chakra was wide open. She was healed. She was in joy, in love. It was no longer a practice. And that is where we're all trying to go. That is why this topic of healing is so meaningful, and particularly healing in Dwapara Yuga, because suddenly we know these things. We know this works. We know that energy can be transformed, and we are only energy. So we know that we can become perfect, and we understand that we can be guided by these great gurus behind me who just want us to be guided by them. And they will come and talk to us. Shanti, don't let that man go home. Don't do it. If he goes home, even to pick up whatever he thought he was going to pick up, he's dead. And you will not feel good about it. Now, that didn't all come to me, but what came is, stop, listen, something's off. So if we can all practice listening better, and we're talking about listening with our hearts, that really can only come through a practice of meditation. Every one of us, in this very life, we could be perfectly healed. Now, one more little bit that Lakshmi is going to finish up, the most important piece, actually, about intuition. So,
Shanti actually brought us just perfectly to really the concept of what intuition is and what it means for us in our relationship with it. And what's so beautiful about that moment that she's referencing in this Kriya, we had a Kriya retreat, it was a Kriya review that she was doing where someone was asking questions about that quote that Sri Yukteswar says, we can't take one step on the spiritual path without awakening the natural love of the heart. And what does that mean? So often we think we have to have devotion in order to get meaning out of the things that we're doing. How do I find that devotion? And that's what was so beautiful about the realization or the revelation, the way Shanti was sharing it, that just know, sit to do your Kriya or your meditation, the very act of meditating, the very act of just how she just said it so beautifully, allowing that energy to run up the spine and through the heart chakra, the act itself is what awakens the devotion. Because it's a perfect reminder of really the root of what meditation teaches us and why we have to end with the question. It's always, I always think of Lahiri Mahashaya, who we can celebrate today. Was it his birthday or Mahasamadhi? So his birthday's on Tuesday, I think then, yeah. So today is his Mahasamadhi day, so we can pay tribute tribute to him by remembering the wonderful story that all of these people would come and, come and have audience with him and ask him questions. And his question, or his response to any ailment, any question, anything that was going on, was always, do more Kriya. Because it really is the root of everything. Just as Shanti is saying, it's the realization that it isn't something out there that is going to inform the transformation within, but everything comes from the inside out. The act of running that, just to use her words that were so beautiful, to running that energy up the spine and allowing it to flow through the heart is what awakens the devotion. And so it comes back to that reality for each one of us, that what can we do? What is there to do? There's only one thing to do, and it is to meditate. Because from our meditation practice, everything else begins to become informed. Our right attitude is cultivated. Our ability to be in tune, to know what we are tuning into. There's a lot of people who like to be in tune, and they're in tune with all kinds of things in the world. And we have to even get quiet enough to know what it is that we want to tune into. And all of that comes through the act of, just as Shanti was saying, so beautiful, she stole my thunder, the act of listening. Right? Not really, but the act of listening, which what is intuition if not tuning in and listening? I was thinking as I was listening to Shanti sharing, I just finished a 4-week series in Palo Alto. I called it the soul's blueprint, and we talked about the chakras and the soul's blueprint, and then karma, dharma, and reincarnation. And it was a really fun class because we had a group of about 12 souls or so, and they were deeply inquisitive. So I would talk for about an hour, and then for 30 minutes, I would just get bombarded with questions, and it was just rapid fire. Well, what do we do if our karma is this? What happens next? Where's our dharma? I actually told them I just taught dharma right before I left. And I said to them, you're all not going to be happy because I know your question is going to be, how do I know my dharma? And I'm here to tell you, I cannot answer that question. They were just so deeply inquisitive. But throughout the course, what we just kept realizing, and what I could come back and share with my friends back at the Sangha team, was that reality that there is, and this was Shanti was referencing this, so many incarnations, so many lifetimes, there are so many things that we are carrying, coming back to that backpack of our humanness, in that backpack. There are so many things that are informing our reality right now, our sense of well-being right now, that we don't even have context for, that we don't even remember. That veil is so thick. How could we begin? And of course, this is where I kept saying at the end of every night after this wonderful barrage of questions was, just stop thinking so much. Just go and meditate and live the teachings and allow it to unravel and inform you in different ways. Because we can never begin to know. We can never begin to parcel it apart with the intellectual mind, with the scrutinizing mind. We have to develop intuition. And as long as we're looking out there, as long as we're always parceling things apart, Swami or Yogananda, he says in, I'm not going to remember where it is, but I have it in my notes. I can go up and find it. But he talks about how, of course, we know this, we experience the world through our 5 senses, and the more we experience the world through those 5 senses, the more drawn out into the world we get. And he says there is a 6th sense, and I was joking last week. It's sort of like the Lord of the Rings. It's the one ring to rule them all. The 6th sense to rule them all is intuition, because it's perfectly antithetical to everything that we experience and learn, and everything that we're drawn out into the world to experience through our 5 senses, because that's just bringing us deeper and deeper into that world of duality and the roller coaster ride and the ups and downs, and we're beginning to have to carry and pile on all of those experiences with us. But when we can step back, when we can tune into intuition, what Yogananda defines intuition as is the soul's capacity for knowing God. And the soul's capacity for knowing God can only come, just as Shanti was sharing, when the heart is quiet. Just like we look at a beautiful pond. I always think of Lotus Lake when I have this image of the pond up at the village. And it's perfectly still and beautiful, and you can look into it and you can see the image. And every piece of that image is clear, and you know what you're looking at. But the second that the wind of restlessness blows, or you throw that rock of karma in, and everything gets a little distorted, we can't see clearly anymore. And it's only through the practice of meditation, as we learn, again, the art and the science on the scientific level, to withdraw our prana, our life force, to bring it in and up the spine, to hold it in that place of stillness. It's through that practice that that clarity comes moment by moment, so that we can listen and we can hear. Because the only way to practice wellness, again, that's what you can hear or both of us sharing over and over again, wellness is not the state of your body, it's not even the state of your mind. But the true wellness comes when we can remove the veil of delusion. Remove that veil that's telling us, that's drawing us out into the world and telling us that we are separate from the divine. That is where true wellness lies, because it's in those moments. We see this from all of the great saints, all of these beautiful teachers that we have in examples of what it looks like. It doesn't matter what's happening in the play around us. That play of Maya that's all around us is just God's Leela, God's play. But when we are in control of our own consciousness, when we know that it is just a play that's happening around us, and we have the ability, just as Yogananda says, we carry a portable paradise with us, to withdraw ourselves just enough to see. Again, it doesn't mean we're untouched. It doesn't mean we don't have lessons to learn. It doesn't mean that it's not difficult at times. But can we step back just enough to ask the question, why is this happening? What can I learn? And just as Shanti was saying, when she's tuning in to a diagnosis that she doesn't know what to do next, what do we do here? And again, it's in that question of asking when we're quiet and we can listen and we hear that intuition. We can't know it with the mind. That's what the Buddha says. The mind that asks the question can never know the answer. But the heart that is open, the heart that is filled with devotion and blossoming with that love, the heart that's asking for Divine Mother's guidance, asking to be told what to do next, how do I move through this? It's in those moments that we find what true wellness is. We find our true capacity to stand up in the face of anything that we have to face in our lives. So I'll invite Shanti up to just close out anything you want to say.
I won't say anything. As soon as I start, it's hard to turn it off. But here's what I want to say. First of all, thank you all for being here. It's just, as I said, it's a joy every time I'm here. And tonight was no less of that. So thank you all. And we're going to end right now. But I would like to say that tomorrow morning at 10? Yeah. We have a question and answer hour and a half or 2 hours, whatever it is. Yeah. Those times are so special. It's hard to describe when we all get together. We do this regularly in Palo Alto every 3 months. It's something that a lot of us look forward to. So if you have questions right now, write them down. Doesn't even need to be about this, about anything on the spiritual path, anything. Just come in. Hopefully some of you at least can be here tomorrow morning. Tomorrow is a big day for all of us, I know, because we have the Q&A and then we'll have Kriya, but let's see. So come ask questions. Because I know now that we're streaming this, is that right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I forgot to say hello to anybody if you're online. But if it's anything like Palo Alto and you don't come, but you watch a little bit, you can usually ask questions. Yeah, and I'm getting that you can. So if you can't be here, but you have a question, somebody will be back there with a microphone and read them out. So hold your questions, write them down, and thank you for being here and for being so great with us, and hopefully we'll see a lot of you tomorrow.